Educated Economist here. Let me just make sure the Wi-Fi is turned off, so at least we can have some decency of a live stream. Let me turn some lights on here so you can get a better view. Today we're going to be talking about competing currencies and what that can really mean for our economy. And many times I will hear people say, man, if we were only on a gold standard, we wouldn't see all this inflation. Everything would be so much better. We could have control over these governments. They wouldn't be running so rampant. And, the deficits in the trade or the trade deficits, the debt, all that stuff wouldn't be a problem because the government simply wouldn't be allowed to go into that deep amount of debt if they were gold-backed currencies that were running the economy as opposed to fiat currencies. Now, this is kind of the general view that most people take, is that there's really only two ways to go. There's dollars and then there's gold. There's the gold standard, which kind of people remember, the classical gold standard. I mean, most people alive today really never got to experience anything like that. But there is a great deal of the population who has and does remember something resembling a gold standard from back in the day when they were not allowed to have gold because gold was essentially the currency that was being used by the government, and they had to have a hold of it so that, things were able to then be used in a way that could create the currency that would then be used by the people in order to keep the economy going. I don't know, that's probably too confusing for most people. Let me just reel it back a little bit. We used to be on a gold standard, but there wasn't enough gold to do all the transactions. So the government stepped in and started creating fiat currencies. It wasn't just the United States, but many countries around the world did the same thing. When they created this fiat currency, they created far too much that could not be backed by the gold and essentially had to sever themselves from the gold standard, and then we ended up on a 100% pure fiat currency. Now, that might be a little easier for people to understand. Here's the thing. There's a time in this country in which that there was many currencies floating around at the exact same time. Not a lot of people think about it in this fashion. They think there was two, dollars and gold. That's it. Right? But it wasn't as simple as that. See, here, let me show you something. This is, right here, a silver certificate. Right? It says silver certificate. This certificates that there is on deposit in the Treasury of the United States of America $1 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. Right? It says here, this currency is legal tender in all debts, public and private. Right? Silver certificate. Pretty simple to understand. A silver certificate certified that there was a piece of silver sitting on a shelf somewhere. This was more of a claim ticket than anything else. Right? This certifies that there is on deposit 1 ounce of silver, or $1 in silver. Right? Payable to the bearer on demand. Claim ticket. Give me my silver. Right? So that's a difference between this and what I have here, which is a US dollar from the US Treasury. All right? Now this says, the United States of America will pay to the bearer on demand $2. Says it right down there. Right? Well, you guys can't read it because it's backwards because YouTube is weird and it flips the image. But it says it right down there. Now, if you notice, this is a red dot right here. Where on the silver certificate, it was a blue dot. This red dot signifies that it's a U.S. Treasury note. This is issued by the U.S. Treasury. Not a Federal Reserve note, the U.S. Treasury note. Okay. And let me see, is this the one? Yeah. Now, this is a Federal Reserve note. Different from the U.S. Treasury note or the silver certificate, right? So these two currencies are different from this currency. This is a Federal Reserve note, not a U.S. Treasury note. Has the green dot. See the green dot right there? Now, this says, we'll pay to the bearer on demand $5, because this is a $5 bill. Okay. Now, something interesting is if I come up here, it says This note is legal tender for all debts, for its face value for all debts, public and private. Okay, that's what it says right there. Legal tender at its face value for all debts, public and private. This one says, this certifies legal tender federal for all debts, public and private. All right, that's the silver certificate. This Federal Reserve note, it says something different. If I can even read it, man, this is small. It says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable for lawful money at the what does that say? At the Treasury? Or at the United States Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank. Now it's really, really small, and I'm sorry, I can't read even with my glasses, it's small, right? But that's what it says, right? Did you guys catch it? This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable for lawful money at any U.S. Treasury or Federal Reserve Bank. So if it's redeemable for lawful money, then what is it? Right? So if it's redeemable for lawful money, then it is admitting that it is not what? Lawful. Because it's redeemable for lawful money. That's the difference between the United States Treasury note and a Federal Reserve note. Now, they essentially do the same thing. Most people will be like, man, what's the difference? What does it mean to me? Nothing, right? It doesn't really mean anything to you because it's going to do the same amount of commerce. It doesn't matter if it's a $5 Treasury or a $2 Treasury note or a $5 Federal Reserve note or a $1 silver certificate. They all spend at face value the same. Here's the interesting part about it. The Federal Reserve note is the older of these notes. Right? This one came out in 1950. The U.S. Treasury note, this is 1953. In the silver certificate, it's 1957. You see that? So all these were in circulation at the exact same time. These three currencies, all very different, all exchanging at face value. Right? No difference between them to anybody when it comes to doing commerce. Now, this is important to understand because if it was relying just on the silver certificate, that's it. Just the silver certificate, because we're going to use nothing but gold and silver and precious metals for our currency, and this is the only thing that would be available. All the rest of the currencies just simply wouldn't exist. So now I just put a $5 and a $2 bill away, and I only have the $1 bill left. How much am I going to be able to buy with just $1? Well, if these other currencies are in circulation, probably not much. But if it's the only dollar in circulation and these other $7 disappeared, well, this dollar is going to be buying a whole lot. And if I decide that I'm going to fold it up and put it in my pocket and not spend it at all, then that dollar disappears and it doesn't chase goods and services. And somebody out there who's wondering, man, what is it that I could do for business? How come it is that I don't you want it? And people will be like, yeah, I want it. What's the problem? I don't have any dollars. Why? Because that guy is saving it. He doesn't put it out there into circulation. There's only so much currency that's available and they decide to not spend it. Now what happens? Commerce slows way down. If you have that sort of situation, what is it that you could possibly do in order to get the economic activity moving? Nothing. You have to wait for redistribution of wealth, for me to finally get to the point where the pain and suffering of not spending my money is then forcing me to put it back out there in circulation again. That's the difference. People must understand that when you have a limited currency, you will have booms and bust cycles every single time. Now, it's cool. I'm good with it. Like, I'm totally down for that. But the majority of the people will suffer the consequences and they hate the idea of it. They will do anything to have the government step in and say, please do something to fix this slow economy. And if we are stuck on a silver or gold standard where they are limited, then they're going to have to say, suffer the consequences. You're just going to have to wait for the redistribution of wealth for those people who have hoarded the money to finally relinquish it back out there. That is a very tough thing for people to have to deal with. Most will not. They will demand that the government do something, which is step up with fiat currencies. Here you go. You can have it, right? You had $1 available. You didn't want to wait for the pain and suffering to finally figure out its equilibrium. So there you go. There's some fiat currency. And by the way, the destruction of the value of it is going to be very prominent throughout the economy while this stuff is chasing all the goods and services. You know, you don't think, like, this is something that I thought, let me just kind of take a break because I know this is a little intense. So let's just kind of joke around here a little bit. Check this out. I got this Disney dollar, right? Nice little souvenir. I picked it up at Disneyland a long time ago. When was it? I forget. 1996. That's right. It was a year after I graduated high school. Sarah and I went down to Disneyland. We picked up this here Disney dollar. Funny thing, legal tender at Disneyland and all Disney stores. It actually says it. Let me see where it's at on here. May be used as legal tender at Disneyland Park, Disneyland Hotels, Walt Disney World Resort, and the Disney stores, U.S. and Puerto Rico. $1. Right? Here it is. I mean, it's like a token, right? It's kind of like a token. Like if you had a token to a pizza parlor, you know, like the tokens that you used to go and play video games or something like that, it's not like they were creating money. They just had tokens you could use. That's not too far off from a token, right? It's kind of similar. I mean, it's a souvenir, much like what a token would be, you know, when you go to an arcade or, you know, the car wash, or remember they used to have car wash tokens and stuff like that. No different from that. It's really just the same. It's just fancy, and they put it into this, you know, cool little dollar form and make it look like a dollar, but ultimately that's all it is. It's just credit and it's a token. So when we think about how it is that money really transfers goods and services, it doesn't really matter what it is. It could be a token like this. It's a paper. It didn't come from the government or anything. It's just somebody created some ink on it and said, here, do commerce. Okay, yeah, right? Now this thing can float around and actually do trade goods and services. Now, I mean, honestly, if there was enough Disney stores around, then you might actually be able to spend this at other stores knowing that they could take it to Disney stores and then spend it, right? But there's not enough Disney stores out there to make that valuable, so there's no way I'm going to spend this at a store or anybody would accept it. But if there was, then it could. You're not forced to accept dollars. Now, interesting enough, you're not supposed to make anything that looks like a dollar, and this kind of looks like a dollar, but it's recognizable that it's not a dollar, so therefore, it's nothing more than a token. Okay? Very interesting enough again. People say, well, just get the physical gold and silver out there in circulation, and people have come up with some pretty good ideas, right? Like these gold backs. See, this is actual gold in here. I forget how much is in this thing. This is 1/100th of a troy ounce of gold. That's like, what, 40 bucks or whatever it is now? I mean, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, how much? That's pretty cool. Like that's like having, you know, a $50 bill or something like that, but it's 40 bucks, $40 bill. And that's pretty neat to think like, hey man, we can use this to go and, you know, say go to the movies, and then yeah, you can hand over this gold and this could start flowing through circulation. The only problem is man, if you ever pop this thing up and showed it to me, I'd be like, yeah man, I'll take that. And then what am I going to do with it? I'm going to put it right here with my stack next to my Disney dollar, my silver certificate, my U.S. Treasury note, and say, man, that's pretty cool stuff. I got a collection of it. I'm going to hoard that thing away too. And you'll never see it again until the pain is so suffering that, you know, we have to move it back out there into circulation again. But it doesn't really make it any different than, say, a coin, right? It's just, you know, in a different form. I mean, it's really just a coin. Just different, you know, it's in this foil form. It's cool. I like it. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, I don't see any difference from that and having any kind of other physical gold. It's just the same thing. Here's another one. This is, I don't even know what this one is. 1 gram. right? Crazy to think. And so how it is that we can actually move this currency around isn't so much of like the wanting or desire, it's the necessity. If I have these gold, if these represent the gold that's being circulated and I hoard it away, then this doesn't chase goods and services. People will be out there going, man, I have all this stuff that I made, all this ideas and skills that I have to deploy. And people are like, hey, man, I would love to buy it. It's not like I don't demand it, but that gold that we are wanting to use is being hoarded away. And so therefore, there's not enough of it out there to chase all the goods and services that people would wish and hope and dream it could. So when people say, yeah, we can have this and it would be a very stable currency, you're absolutely right. It would be incredibly stable. Right? Things wouldn't cost that much because it wouldn't be that much chasing goods and services out there. And so you're absolutely right. It would be very stable. It would also be a lot of inequality. There would be booms and bust cycles. It would be very difficult to deal with. The government would not be able to step in and help. And most people would end up suffering in pain and misery as the people who really understood the system would take full advantage of it and hoard it for themselves. And now you only have to look through history to see that is the examples. Right? I mean, there's plenty of examples of history that's exactly how it goes down. So when the Federal Reserve steps in, or any central bank, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Federal Reserve or not, when they step in and they are injecting money into the system, most people will say, well, that's dollar destruction. They just want the poor people to be poor and the rich people to have it all. Now, that very well could end up being the results of it, but that's not what they were trying to do. They were trying to provide enough money, enough transactable currencies out there for people to do all the commerce they could ever imagine. And that's a huge difference, to be able to leverage your skills and your ideas and then take that ideas and skills into the future by providing products and services, but you would never been able to do if you weren't able to leverage it. These are the things that end up coming from the central banking systems, and what it is that people are now claiming to be the evilness that comes from it is the result, right? The same thing that they are trying to do to help is creating the inequality within itself. And so people say, man, they are causing this evil intent, but they're not really causing evil intent. They were just essentially trying to provide a currency for all the commerce that could ever be imagined. But then when new money comes into the system, it creates inequality every single time. So now I think about it, it was just like, okay, so what is it that could ever possibly go, like, what is it that we could possibly do here, right? So maybe if it was just competitive currencies, just let them all just do it, right? It doesn't matter what currency is out there, just go for it, right? This is kind of the idea. And people would just naturally gravitate to gold, but they wouldn't. They would naturally gravitate to the one currency that would be available that is acceptable by everybody out there in order to provide the goods and services that they are looking to do. So if you had two currencies out there, what you are going to find is that these two can come into play at the same time, but what's going to end up happening is that I'm going to take this one and I'm going to hoard it for myself and I'm going to put this one back into circulation again. Mm-hmm. So if you have two currencies out there floating around and one is very limited, like gold, it's going to become mine. And a lot of other people are going to do the exact same mentality. They're going to go out there and they're going to grab all those gold dollars and all those gold coins that are floating through circulation. Everybody says it's a good idea so long as we have two competitive currencies, and they're going to hoard it for themselves. And this isn't something that I'm just predicting or guessing. This has been documented many times. It's called Gresham's Law. And you can go and find it from hundreds and hundreds of years ago from the idea of coin clipping. See, there was a time in which silver coins circulating, the people would take the coins and clip the edges off of them and save some of that silver for themselves and then spend the coin at face value. As the people within the economy who were doing the trade recognized these clipped coins, they started losing value, and the unclipped coins held a higher value and they got hoarded away, and only the clipped coins would go into circulation. This was Gresham's law, or this was Gresham noticing this to be taking place. Now, it wasn't considered a law until many years later, as many other economists were noting what it was that Gresham was talking about, but it is very much occurring today, and you can think about it for yourself. If you came to me and said, hey, man, are you selling that computer right there? And I'd be like, yeah, man, I'll sell the computer. And then you said, what is it that you'll accept? And I said, man, I'll accept anything. And you showed up and you said, hey, man, I got fiat currency and I got gold dollars. Which one you want? And I said, I'll take whatever. Are you really going to hand me the gold? Or are you going to hand me the dollars? You're probably going to hand me the dollars, right? I mean, that would only make sense because fiat currency is worthless. Nobody wants that. They just print it up like crazy and it's like, it's no good. But gold is gold and everybody knows that. And it's only limited. And so why would you give it up? You wouldn't. You would stash it for yourself. And that's Gresham's law. So gold can't win against the dollar. The dollar must fail. The dollar must fail completely, meaning that nobody will accept it. Now, what I find very interesting is every time I hear that dollar sucks and nobody likes it and think about how horrible it is and cash is trash, and then immediately turn around and say, but my stock portfolio is up to $1 million. My house is worth $850,000. My, this is worth and all that. And they price it all out in dollars. The very worthless thing that they don't want, they price it all out in. And I'm thinking, okay, so did you price out like how much this is going to be able to trade for carrots? No. But you do think about the cost of carrots and how much they cost in dollars. But you don't think about how much gold or how many carrots you can buy with gold. Do you do that immediate math to say, okay, what's the price of carrots right now? Okay, the dollars, and that means it's going to cost, half a gram of gold or whatever, in order to figure out how to buy this big old case of carrots. And nobody's going to do it that way. They're going to say, how much does a carrot cost? Dollars. How much gold do I have in dollars? How much can I trade that in over to get? You see where I'm getting at? Everything is priced out in dollars. So the day that the dollar doesn't exist, we'll be talking a different story. But until then, everybody, literally everybody prices everything in dollars and they don't see any separation. Now, once you do, and you look at it separately, then you start looking at how many ounces of gold does it take to buy a house. That's a different. You don't even think about how many dollars it takes. You just think about how many ounces of gold it takes. When things are priced that way, it takes 100 ounces of gold to buy a house. My house is selling for 98 ounces of gold. There is no deciding whether or not it's comparatively to the dollar, and if the dollar is trading for or if the gold is trading for $4,000 an ounce, and the dollar index is rising. None of that would matter. No. All right. How many ounces of gold for that house? Nobody will price it out that way. They will say the house costs this much dollars, and then gold is worth this much dollars, and then they'll do the conversion. Now, knowing that to be the case, you can set everything else aside. Dollars is it. Until that doesn't happen, then you can know that dollars will always be the currency that's in circulation because you're not going to hand me the gold, right? You're not going to hand me the gold. You're going to hand me the fiat currency, and I'm going to price the house out in fiat currency, and you're going to price the gold out in fiat currency, and then we're going to do the conversion in between and figure out how many ounces of gold it takes to buy the house. When that doesn't happen, then we can talk another story. But until then, we can always assume that the dollar is going to be in circulation and it's always going to be in demand. And the reason why it's always going to be in demand is because of all the dollar-denominated debt. Every single car loan, house loan, credit card, treasury bond, everything that is out there is due in what? Dollars. Not gold. Right? Not the fiat gold, or not the gold, but in the fiat currency itself, every single debt is doing it. Not every one of them, practically all of them. Right? Not all of them, practically all of them. So when we think about the dollar-denominated debt that exists in the world, the only way the dollar will fail is when the dollar-denominated debt is not going to be accepted anymore. Meaning that the people understand that they will not be paid. That means all pension funds are over. That means all countries out there who have issued out debt to other foreign nations that were due in dollars, they forgive all that, right? And they're like, oh man, it's all cool. And then everybody starts off at ground zero because there is no checks coming in the mail. There's no loans going out to the farmers so that they can plant the next year's harvest. There's nothing happening out there with commerce because you're going to rely on some dude out there to lend you some gold. And I tell you what, if I'm in a situation like that, you're going to be paying a hell of an interest rate on mine. A hell of an interest rate. Do you think that you're going to get separated from the rich at that point when the only thing available is gold? And I'm not going to accept anything but an extreme interest rate off of it. And if you don't pay, I own everything that you built, all the wonderful awesomeness that you have put together and borrowed to try and achieve. And if you can't pay it, because there's eventually going to come a moment when there's not enough of it to go around to service all the debts. And when that moment comes, everything that you did is now mine. And that's the unfortunate situation when you come into that most people are not taken into consideration. Like, that's exactly the path that I would take. If we had a fiat currency complete collapse of that nature, then I would wait, try to hold on to that stuff, not spend it, not try to use it for survival. That's ridiculous, right? You'll end up trading an ounce of gold for a loaf of bread. Now, if you can hold on to that stuff till you can get through it to the other side, now you got something that you can use, because then, again, lend it out there for an extreme interest rate because there's only so much of it going around. And when the limitations of it finally meets its limit, those people are going to default. Guaranteed. And when that happens, you're there to take all their stuff from them. And now, don't think that doesn't happen today. Right? That happens with fiat currency. It's the same thing. They turn the debt off and everybody goes bankrupt. And then those people who had lent all that money out there go in there and swoop everything up for pennies on the dollar. It's not like it doesn't happen today. So recognize it, that it's going to happen here and it's going to happen here. Right? We can take into consideration of fiat currencies versus digital currencies. But outside the convenience of digital currencies being able to transact with people who are not in your physical presence, it really doesn't do much difference, right? If you have unlimited fiat, or if you have unlimited fiat currency and you have an unlimited cryptocurrency, then the results are the same, right? The convenience of it definitely presents itself, being able to transact with people in a fast and efficient way. That is something that maybe, say, the gold couldn't do. But if there's a limited amount of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin or whatever it is that you're using for your currency, then the exact same thing is going to happen that would happen with gold, and that the crypto of limitation is going to get hoarded away, and it's going to deny the rest of the people the ability to do transactions. Then you'll have pain and suffering until the people who have hoarded that money have suffered the pain themselves and deplete or redistribute that money back out there into the world. And all that Bitcoin. All right. Ice, isn't it cold in Oregon? Not really today. It was actually pretty nice. 24 carats would be best. Government claims to gold can be easily melted away, then weigh and spend. Well, the thing about it is that here's the other problem that most people will not take into consideration or tell you if they are advocates of the gold standard, and that is Triffin's dilemma. Right, so we covered Gresham's law and why it is that it's going to get hoarded away, but then there's Triffin's dilemma. Right, let me see if I can. I'm trying to get my computer to turn on here. I get a little bit more light off of it. Triffin's dilemma is when you think about like how it is that the United States rose as a manufacturing powerhouse. This is actually a mixture of like Cantillon effect and in Triffin's dilemma, but Triffin just recognized the case, right, and what it is that was going to end up happening. And that as we rose as a manufacturing powerhouse and we distributed that stuff out there to the world and the world was sending us their money, we increased our standard of living. When we increased our standard of living, at the same time, we started buying foreign production. When that money was moving out there to the rest of the world and the world was using that to do their exchanges and their world currency, movements, so basically doing transactions with other nations that didn't involve the United States, right? It started becoming this world reserve currency. Triffin recognized that the demand for dollars was going to increase dramatically. Well, if this starts to happen, then the exports out of the United States start to diminish. And he saw that this was going to be a problem and that it was going to take ever increasing amounts of deficit trade in order to get the dollars out there to the world to do the world transactions that were demanded of the dollar. If they did not do this, then the dollar would strengthen as the world was looking for those dollars to do the transactions to cover their debts that they had written in dollars. And if the United States didn't buy their stuff, we wouldn't be able to inject the money into the rest of the world. I mean, it's complicated in the idea of what was going down, but it's pretty simple to understand when you think, okay, if you raise your standard of living because you were a manufacturing powerhouse producing that stuff and sending it out there to the world sent you their money, you started buying their stuff. As you started buying their stuff, that money started doing more and more transactions out there in the world. As those transactions started to increase, the demand for dollars were increasing. Now, the only real way to get a significant amount of dollars out there to the world is to buy foreign production. So as the dollar was in demand and it was increasing the strength of it, which essentially destroys your manufacturers, we had to figure out a way to essentially meet the demand that was outside of the United States, and that is by the purchasing of foreign production. All right. And again, this is recognized as Triffin's dilemma, and he noticed this back in the 60s. All right. All right, 170 people watching. Right on. Oh, hey, check it out. We got a super chat. Let's go read that. Hey, right on. Awakening Our Future. Thank you so much for the $2. Where do you see the country in 5 years economically, socially, social economically? Will current power structures still be at play, including all the fiat? Who wins and in the end? Okay, I don't know what the end means. The rich or the 90%? In 5 years from now, by the way, you're great. Thank you so much, Awakening Our Future. I really appreciate the $20, the support for the channel. You're very awesome. So is everybody else who has hit that thumbs up button and shared the video to get more people to join in today. Let's kind of break this down just a little bit. Okay, so where do you see the country in 5 years economically, social economically? Okay, so I see, just like I've always said, that we're going to have ever increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor. All right, and that is going to continue regardless. There may come moments in which that the deployment of a stimulus package or some kind of government effort will reduce it, or at least give the appearance that they are trying to attempt to shrink this wedge that is being driven. Whatever they do, most likely it will involve the injection of new money. When that injection of new money comes, whether it goes to the top or the bottom, it will eventually find its way up to the top, creating even more wedge. So now understand, that is what will happen, right? At some point in the future. And then to the other part, will current power structures still be at play? Yeah, I mean, that is not going to go away. There's not something that is going to come in and just alleviate them of their power. The only thing I could really see there being like a complete collapse of the entire banking system. And if that is the case, then all bets kind of be off, because we don't really know how far into, doomsday scenario like that we could go. Many people thought that was taking place during COVID. And I thought to myself, man, not even close. Like, if people think that was bad, they have no clue about what's coming, right? Because when it gets bad, it's going to be like way worse than that. Like, that's going to be nothing, right? Great financial crisis. People will wish that they could have great financial crisis as a crisis, because it's going to seem mild comparatively to how bad it can get. You have to understand, like, when I'm talking world dollar denominated debt begins to collapse, this is like, holy crap. Like, I mean, I don't even know. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. I don't know. People talk about all this other stuff, and I'm thinking politics does not keep me up. None of this stuff. Most of the American economy and the way the monetary policy, that does not keep me up at night. What keeps me up at night is when the world dollar denominated debt comes due and there's not enough liquidity out there to cover it all. What happens then? Because that is going to be one of the scariest scenarios that most people have no idea. Like, is they don't even understand, like they don't even fathom the idea of what that means. So to me, like I think about that as the scariest possibility, out there. Let me continue on with this super chat here. So the current powers will be in play in 5 years outside of a complete collapse of the system, including all the fiat. Yeah, we're going to be switching into central bank digital currencies of some sort, most likely stablecoin. And that's going to be a slow transition at first because most of the time people are very resistive to the idea. And really, the ultimate goal of it is to get cash out of the system in order to take interest rates into negative territory. And at this point, with monetary policy being elevated and the neutral interest rate being somewhat elevated as well, the idea of taking the Fed funds rate back to zero isn't necessarily like needed at this point. It will in the future, but at right now and even in the next 5 years, I don't know if that's necessarily a necessity that is going to be taking place. I have a suspicion that they are going to try and keep the elevated inflation and inflation expectations going, persistently into the future in order to keep that neutral interest rate elevated because it gets closer to the Fed funds rate and actually makes the economy less restricted. And that's really the game that they're playing, is between the neutral interest rate and the Fed funds rate in an elevated fashion. But the only way to do that is to persistently have elevated inflation expectations. So that seems to be occurring, and most likely I think that's going to be what's occurring throughout the rest of this administration leading into the next one. All right, let's finish this off. The rich or the 90%? Who wins in the end? Okay, the rich or the 90% in 5 years from now? By the way, you're great. Thank you again for that. So who wins in the end? I don't know what the end means. Like, what does the end mean? Like, I think about people who might have been like hardcore conspiracy theorists, 20 years ago, and they were in their 60s. And now they're 80, and if they are still like, oh man, in the end, we're going to win. And I'm thinking, in the end of what, man? In the end of your life? At the end of time? Like, what, I mean, what are we, like, rapture? I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what's the end? Like, tomorrow, the sun is going to come up. How did you position yourself to deal with that? That's the end, right? That's the end result, whatever it is that you have done. So when I think about like what the end is, it's not an end. This is a cyclical thing that is happening here. We have this separation that is going to cause even more inequality to happen. And as long as the new money pours in through this money printing scheme, which is essentially creative financing, then that wedge gets wet even bigger and deeper. How long can that last? Who knows? If they go into cryptocurrencies or central bank digital currencies, stable coins, and then they go into a cashless society, and then they go into negative interest rates, and they deploy something like modern monetary theory and UBI and all this other kind of crazy, wacky schemes. And again, it's all creative financing, because if you're not producing real goods and services, then that's what you are doing, is you're trying to come up with a way of reshuffling the chairs on the Titanic or whatever. It's going to go down. It's only a matter of time. How long can they hold on is anybody's guess. What creative ideas can they come up with? Some pretty fancy ones, especially when you start thinking about stable coins and cashless societies. I mean, this could go on for a very long time, way outlive me. So I would never get to see the end. What do I do between now and the end other than try to take the best advantage for myself? How do I do that? Lower my expenses, increase my income, and deploy that extra money, all the money beyond the money you're already making, into some sort of return. And if you're not doing that, then you can expect that most likely you're going to watch the people at the top just go further and further and further away. But if you're in assets, and I mean, it's going to be hard to pick these. Some of them go up, some of them go down, some of them, fail altogether. Some of them go up to $1 million. You really have to learn that for yourself. And this is where I think a lot of times people just so scared of that. How do I put my money towards something that has a return? I don't know. I'm scared. If I do that and it goes away and people are going to laugh at me, I'm going to feel embarrassed. I'm going to feel like I worked all this money and it was gone, and now, I can never get it back, and I'm, feel all depressed about that. But yet at the same time, there'll be, you know what I'm saying? Go, 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 go. But don't put your money towards anything that would fail. Go, 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 go. You see where I'm getting at? right? They'll totally waste their money on something. They'll blow it on weed and booze and everything else under the sun, but then won't put it towards something that might actually have a return. And then if it failed, they would be like, oh, I ain't ever doing that again. Right? Alright. Last thing. Do we think CBDC decides where you can buy your pizza, or if you can have a pizza, not be Catherine Osfitz, chair of HUD under GW Bush? She is total pro for the 90%. Um, I would only assume that if you put some sort of limitation, like if you had a cryptocurrency and you went to go use it somewhere and they're like, oh, sorry, man, no. And I'm like, I can't spend this currency with you freely? And they'd be like, no. It's like, does anybody else know that I can't do that? Because if I knew that I couldn't do it, or somebody else couldn't do it, or my buddy wasn't going to be, then I would be worried about myself, right? Like if it was just like, oh, bro, they cut off your central bank digital currency, sucks to be you. Would you really be like, I'm cool, I got mine? No, you'd be like, holy crap, I'm out of this stuff and I'm the next one. See, here's the thing. They're going to allow, like the people who are worried about the tyrannical things coming from central bank digital currencies, like the control and all that other stuff, really, they're not gonna worry about that part. You're gonna be able to do all the transactions you want, and probably even black market illegal ones, and not even get busted for it, because they want you to trust it, right? They want you to trust it in a way that you trust the dollar. And if you are able to get away with all the crazy things that you think that won't be able to get away with, they literally condition an entire generation of people to just accept it, right? You don't get in trouble, nothing ever happens. And then once everybody finally gets into that position and they feel that way, I mean, think about bank accounts and stuff like that. I mean, people shouldn't be trusting those, but they use them for all kinds of illegal activities, right? So something very similar would end up taking place. And if you can get that to be the situation, then it'll just be simply accepted, right? It'll be like, it'll just be accepted that I mean, not accepted like you'll take it. It's just accepted that it sucks, it won't use. All right. And then you'll have to do something else. All right, not your problem, $2. Thank you for pushing back against 100% hedonism. All right. Thank you so much for the $2, not your problem. If you watch the Federal Reserve Innovation Conference, they are already talking about this. They have wallets linked to decentralized ID. They are using Chainlink and with Swift. All right, I can't find that anywhere within the Federal Reserve statements themselves. Now, I could be wrong. I've heard plenty of other people say that the Federal Reserve is doing it, but I cannot find that within the Federal Reserve's own statements that they are using a particular currency, a particular cryptocurrency or blockchain technology or anything else outside of possibly using the stable coins that are already in existence. They are regulating those stable coins that are already in existence. And if some of those are using some of the technology, there's a difference inside of this, because ultimately, if you take the dollar, right, and then it's getting backed, or I'm sorry, there's take a cryptocurrency and then it's getting backed by the dollar, then whatever monetary policy is taking place through the Federal Reserve transfers right into that other currency. So just because like somebody comes out and says, oh, hey man, I created this UE coin and it's backed by dollars and now it's good as dollars and doing transactions like dollars, doesn't necessarily make it a functioning tool of the Federal Reserve outside of the ability to transfer monetary policy right through that coin, right? So I can imagine right here, right? There's one right there, right? That's the same thing. It's essentially a token for a dollar. If you can ease the transactions, make them more fluid, that's one thing that the stable coins are being regulated for, but it's not the Federal Reserve's coin, right? See, and the reason why this is the problem for the Federal Reserve is because within their charter, they cannot directly inject money into the system. And this is where people lose their mind. Of course they do. That's what the Fed does. They just spit money into the air and everybody collects it, right? That's not the way it works. The Federal Reserve buys something. They have to go out there and they have to buy something out there in the world. That means whatever it is has already been purchased. So when they buy U.S. Treasuries and put it on the balance sheet, that's a second purchase from the Treasury. Like the Treasury issued it and it was sold to a primary dealer, and then the Federal Reserve came in and bought it from the primary dealer. The Fed cannot just go and just inject money into the system. The money has to be routed through the banking system through loan issuance. It's like, you can print up all the money in the world, but unless it's lent into the system, it doesn't chase the goods and services. The way it got lent into the system where it started chasing goods and services, the government literally borrowed it and handed it over because you're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to take out enough money because you're debt saturated, you're you're underpaid, penalized in everything that's going on out there, like whether it's in groceries, inflation, and insurance, everything that's going on within your lifestyle, it's getting more complicated, more difficult, more expensive, and the wages don't keep up with that. There's no way that the lowering of interest rates give you the encouragement to go out there and just say, hey man, I'm going to borrow money to go start a pizza parlor, buy a house, buy a car, go on vacation, and have a really awesome time spending this money into the economy. Nobody's going to be doing that anymore because the working individual is not in a position that can take advantage of something like that. There was a time right, that they could. And that's why people focus in on it. They say, man, if we lower interest rates, all these people would run out there and borrow this money and go and have a really good time with it. But that's not what they're going to do anymore because they're not in a position that they can do it like that. Okay? It used to be that way, right? There was good paying jobs here in America. Good manufacturing jobs had good living wages. You could buy a whole basket full of groceries for $20. It was an awesome time. Everybody was singing Kumbaya, thinking how great it was. And then as time went on, manufacturers were leaving and people were going, why is this major wedge taking place? And it's like, well, maybe do you think it's because of the ever increasing amounts of new money that is pouring into the system? And that the majority of the people failed to position themselves in a way that they could take advantage of that new money pouring into the system by buying into assets that would move up in price, pay dividend, have rental payments, have some sort of business or education that went with it. They just sat there and waited for their job to be enough, and they lost out, right? They're not going to be able to compete that way. And it's quite unfortunate, you know? All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. 170 people watching with 81 likes. Go run out and hit that like button right now. Let's get it up to 170 likes. Let's get everybody liking it. All right. MRider777. Are we seeing the exuberance yet from the top 20%, or is it just starting? I mean, I think people would think of the irrational exuberance as when the top wealthy just have the ability to just buy up all kinds of stuff, and the working classes doesn't even have any kind of ability to even compete with that. It's on. That's the way it's going to be from now on. The irrational exuberance doesn't even really exist anymore. Because you can't even borrow the money to go be irrational with it. All right? Like, how many people can just go out there and buy a house? You can't be irrational if you can't get it. Right? Like, the only people who could possibly be irrational is the people who already are very rational with their money, or else they wouldn't have it. So the irrational people don't even have the ability to be irrational anymore. Like, I mean, they can go buy cars and go get loaded up on credit card debt, but they can't really do the big thing. You know, like go buy real estate, you know, buy many houses or something like that. And then, you know, it's just like they just don't even have the ability to even do it like they used to. All right. The pitch was the technology, especially stablecoins, RWS, DeFi, could help them provide liquidity more effectively outside the U.S. Yeah, and that's just the thing. Like, I understand, like, that's going to be something of a difficulty, is trying to figure out how it is that you get that money out of the United States, right? Because that's really the goal of the Federal Reserve and their money printer, is to deal with the liquidity issues that are taking place. Liquidity issues is another way of saying financial crisis, or dollar debt is coming due and there's not enough dollars to pay it and people are defaulting, bankruptcy, all that other stuff. That's what ends up happening when there's not enough money in the system, or perceived enough money, because there's plenty of money in the system, right? But if there's a perceived lack of money in the system, then people are going to be woohoo. They hold way back and they're like, I'm not deploying any more money. I got to hold on to it because there's a lack of it that's taken place. That's a liquidity issue. There's plenty of money. All they have to do is just go out there and start spending it. But if the people who are worried about a slowdown in the economy start hoarding onto that money, then you start pulling the liquidity out and people recognize that, they all start behaving in the same fashion. Scrapping copper is deflationary. Kid just stopped by, a friend of mine. Oldest just bought a car, 10% interest rate, $32,000 for a 2018 Honda with 60,000 miles. 2018. Wow. Yeah, and that's it. Well, and again, you think about what it is that some people will do. Like if you could go and borrow $10,000 to start a business. Yeah. See, this is the difference when people are borrowing, like they have to think everything in the economy really relates down to beers and saws. So for example, that car is essentially beer. Granted, it might be a cool car. You might be able to keep it in good shape, maybe hold on to it and have some value for it at the end and maybe even use it to make some money, do Uber, whatever you're going to do. So there is a way that that car could be an asset and then be, useful to you. But for the most part, it's a depreciating asset that usually costs you maintenance, gas, insurance, all the other stuff that goes with it. And at the end of the day, it ends up costing you a lot of money. So unless you have thought, okay, I'm going to use this car in an attempt to make money, then most likely you can just put it in the beer category. Now, if you take the $10,000 and then said, hey, I'm going to go and try and start a business, or I'm going to invest with this, or I'm going to do something, hold on to it to maybe deploy it into something that is going to actually have some sort of return, so I'm going to hold on to it in a safe spot, something of this nature, well, then you're moving into hammers, right? And then when you move into hammers, eventually you will pay the debt back, and then whatever it is that you have positioned yourself in will start paying you. There is nothing on that side of the car that at the end of it, when you finally pay it off, unless you can get a little bit of return because you haven't, messed it up too much, it really doesn't have any kind of return except for less than what you had put into it. And that right there, that to me is like everything. Why would I drive a new car? I don't get it. I have the ability to go out and get whatever kind of car. Oh, not every. I can go out there and get pretty much any kind of car I want, right? And I can go buy $100,000 car. Right? I'm sure they will. I got an 841 credit score, and I can put the money down. Right? That would totally deny me of any ability to then put myself in a position in which that I would be able to accumulate assets. It would deny me that. I would literally be looking cool and rich while driving myself right into the bottom side of the wedge. They would look over and they're like, dude, you got the YouTube channel, this and that big old beautiful truck, dude, you're killing it. Right down to the wedge, right into the bottom wedge. Right? Nobody would be able to see that except for me knowing it. That would be the case. Everybody else would be doing, man, he's killing it. Look at it. He's got this awesome truck. He's doing all the things. Yeah, awesome. No, absolutely wrong. See, people don't recognize it. They're saying, dude, you drive a piece of shit car. Who are you to be telling anybody? And I'm thinking, man, I was able to collect like $50,000 in assets in the last 18, 20 months. And it was hard. It was very difficult to do that. And the position in which that I have taken in a lot of things, it was just like, wow, man, I don't want to brag about it, but dang, I think I'm really starting to figure this stuff out. And it's really just understanding the underlying economic forces and the position that I need for myself and my family and how it is that I'm living my life. It is very unique to me, and it seems to be working the more I understand it. Now, I don't know who else is out there who was broke as hell at 40 years old, drunk, in debt, had nothing going on, but then in 9 years to be able to tell a story like I just did over the last, minute, that's very unique, I would think. And anybody else who would look at that and say, man, I would like to emulate something like that. Like, I think I would like to have my standard of living be something that is not stressful. That means you want to pay your bills on time, right? It's the greatest feeling in the world. In fact, nothing else beats it. When you have a position in your life in which that you thought that you were never going to be able to pay your bills, never be out of debt, never have anything going on, and then not all of a sudden, but essentially all of a sudden, you don't have that life anymore. Right? Do you really want to ruin it by looking cool? By impressing other people? By driving that big fancy truck? Or do you want to accumulate more assets and get into a position in which that you feel that you can actually have something in your life at the end of the road, or whatever that is? It's not easy, but then again, it's not really that hard when you think about it. It's like, well, that means life sucks, right? And it's like, no, life doesn't suck, because life is pretty cool if you just let it be cool. So you don't really need anything in your life that costs money. Everything is essentially free, and it's in abundance everywhere around you. It doesn't cost anything to do anything. People just make it cost money. See, I think about it, it was just like, there was a time I flew down to Houston, first class, got on stage, stayed at a nice hotel, ate great food, and it didn't cost me anything. And I didn't come up with a single dollar for any of that stuff. It was, it was essentially for the rebel capitalists, and they paid for it. But I think to myself, people are like, man, you can't experience those things unless you get the dollars first, and that's absolutely incorrect. It is probably the worst understanding of how it is that you can acquire things in your life that I have ever heard, is to think that you need dollars first. That is simply not the case. Right? And knowing that it's an energy of being in it, right? Being in the flow. Once you're in the flow, it's a matter of figuring out how it is you get that flow to you, and then don't let it go past, right? Increase your income, lower your expenses. Once you get into that position, you start acquiring assets, and then you're looking at a new car going, oh yeah. I don't know, I think I might be deploying that to some more stocks and bonds, and maybe I'll even get into these stocks or whatever. Pick your choice. There's something out there that's going to have a return. And when you think about that as being more important than looking cool or having the cool things, or, this is what I need to enjoy my life, not realizing that all the enjoyment and fulfillment of life is essentially free, You're not out of debt yet, Simon. You got to get that house paid off, and you could claim that. Well, okay, that's true. And actually, you're very right. I also have some credit card debt that I'm going to be knocking out here fairly quickly. And so you're right. I am not out of debt. However, I could step out of this house and I can rent it out, and then it would be a cash flowing asset. So to me, I look at this house as a place that I get to live, and although I have to technically pay on it for the next 26 years, at any given moment, I could step out of this place. I could turn it into a cash flowing asset. Now, I mean, guarantee, but the possibilities are there. Okay? This is not something that is a liability. This is a total asset in every way you look at it. In fact, the value of the house at one time was going up more than I could earn. In a month, it go up more than I could earn in a month. That was ridiculous. Now, a lot of that has come out, but it's still incredibly higher than what I had paid for it. And considering how much I had to put down on it, I am in a position on this house in which that I have so much equity into it that even if I was to try and sell it for under the market value of it, I would still probably make some money on it. That's the position that I hold with this house. Everybody has to have a place to live. If I didn't have the debt, I would be paying rent. So to me, that's not a liability. That is an asset. Now, at this point, it's a liability the way I'm using it, because I got to pay the mortgage, I got to pay the maintenance, I got to pay the tax, I got to pay all that other stuff. But once I'm done using it for the reason I'm using it for, which is to raise my family, then I can turn it into cash flowing asset. And at that time, I would only assume that the rents would probably be higher than they are even today. So it's a pretty good deal when you think about it in that fashion, that buying the house now and then waiting a few years before you start renting it out, right? Then you end up with even more rent because the rent's most likely going to go up, not down. That's again puts it in a much better position to even stay in it for a few years. Now, the credit card debt, I could literally just go and just knock it, just do it, right? I could just go do it. But I don't want to give up the little bit of cash that I keep in the bank to do that. Most of what I have done is I have deployed it into a position. Now, I could unwind some of those positions and again, probably not only knock that out, but then go buy a brand new car, and still not feel like that big of a, I mean, it would be a big chunk of it, but at the end of it, it wouldn't be like, like everything I got. This is something like, again, like I look at the position that I now hold 9 years ago. Holy crap. Like to say that I have $100,000 of equity in real estate, $100,000 in portfolio for stocks, bonds, and cryptos, to be able to say that I have a cash flow of income and very low debt, I mean, the position that I hold right now, I'm just thinking, man, it ain't like perfect, but hey, it ain't too damn bad. It is not bad at all, and I'm just going to intend on keeping it that way as long as I can. Simon has learned all of the lessons about building wealth. Now he's ready to do it. Well, I think the idea of building wealth starts from the day that you decide that you're going to do it. Like even the idea, if you're $100,000 in debt and have no assets whatsoever, and you are $99,000 in debt on that credit card tomorrow, you are building wealth. You have stepped in the right direction of building wealth. In fact, there is no better investment than paying off debt. And it's probably one of the coolest ways to be an investor is to pay off that debt because you don't even have to really think about what you're doing. Right? You don't even have to think about it. You just work as hard as you can to acquire the money, to put it off on that credit card, to pay that thing down, because there is no return on an investment that's going to beat the credit card debt. I mean, if you got a 3% mortgage on a house, yeah, okay, then you could probably find return on your investment that is going to be much better than the 3% inflation that, or the 3% that you're going to pay on the interest on the house. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pay the house off early at a 3% interest if you can go out there and get a 13% return somewhere, right? The difference is 10%, so that's like, it's only smart to do it that way. But if you got high interest rate, credit card debt, car loan debt, something like that, then it doesn't make any sense to invest. Just pay off that damn that debt. And you put that money towards it every single time. What you are doing is you are literally positioning yourself to be in the flow. You may not realize it because you don't have any flow coming to you, but the moment that you pay off that debt, boom, instantaneous flow. Instantaneous. You've been working damn hard for years to get it paid down, putting extra money, all the money beyond the money you're making, and you're trying to get that extra money in order to pay off that debt. And the moment that you pay it off, boom, instantaneous flow. Most people screw it up right there. They say, perfect, I'm going to go buy a car. Nope. You got to continue to live your life as if you were in debt, and then you start deploying that money to a return. And you don't change anything about the way that you were living. You live like you were as broke as the day that you were $20,000 in debt. I don't care if you have $20,000, you live in the exact same life. Those are the people who collect the assets, who move up to the other side of the wedge. All right? I mean, you can do that with the day job and a side hustle and a little bit of effort. You can make that happen. Anybody can. Most people don't realize what it is that they are doing, in that just trying to enjoy themselves and enjoy their environment, enjoy their food, enjoy their drinks, enjoy their life, they end up putting themselves on the bottom side of the wedge and wonder why they're so miserable. You were trying to enjoy yourself. That's why. You ever think that maybe the acquiring of assets, the building of a business, learning of a new skill, that is the enjoyment that you really deserve, that you are looking for? You start engaging in that, and your life all of a sudden becomes meaningful, useful, purposeful. Right? You're not searching for a good time, man. Good times just exist because you're doing it. Where are my glasses? What did I do with those? I dropped them here. Oh, nobody wants to be told what they should buy. I wonder how all the silver stackers can't coordinate a run on silver if such a great buy. If it's such a great buy. Interesting. See, this is where I think a lot of times I find where I have really I've really shifted in the way that I view what it is that I expect from silver and gold. Um, I don't really expect it to do any, like, I don't even really think about the price of it that much. You know, like where it's at, where it's going, what it could be, or anything like that. What I kind of think about is how many ounces I have. Like, if I was to think about it in any way, how many ounces do I have per member of my family? That's kind of what I think. Because it's an insurance policy to me, and if I think about it in any other way, it's usually pretty disappointing. But it seems to work out so well as an insurance policy for me. In fact, like every time. I've used it for all kinds of purposes that wasn't exactly like trying to gain a profit from it. I used it to trade. I traded 165 ounces for a Tahoe. I traded 75 ounces and I think $1,000 or $700. I can't remember exactly what it was for a Suburban, a different Suburban. I got this Suburban by securing a loan by using the silver as collateral, and then essentially bought the silver back at a 10% interest, which people told me was absolutely insane. But when I did the deal, it was at $30 an ounce. By the time I was completing the deal, it was over $35, $38 an ounce. I was literally buying my silver back under spot price because I had secured that deal. You know, I use silver for all kinds of things. I don't really think about what it's, selling for. Like, I'm not trying to make any money off of it. I'm just using it to secure loans. I'm using it maybe at times to buy a car, but I'm not thinking about how much it's worth in dollars. I'm thinking about the security that I get from it, the insurance policy that I get from it. That works every time, like every time. But the moments that I want it to be useful as far as like, the profit of it, I mean, I want it to be at $500. I don't want it at 50. $50 an ounce, I still want to buy it. But when it's at $500 an ounce, oh yeah, man, I think I might be in, I might get into it then if it's $500 an ounce. But I don't want that to happen until I'm like 80, like when I'm old. That way I can make use of it, like use it for my, I don't know, for all of my medical treatment or something like that. Because like at the end of life, I don't know what it is that I would really even want it for at that point. So I really hope I just give it to my kids so they can use it as an insurance policy too. So they can sleep at night. Yeah. All right, moving on. So many people in here. We got 169 people watching with 106 likes, $42 in super chats because you guys are always so supportive of the channel. Thank you for continuing to hit that like button and sharing the video. Anything else we want to cover? Do you know what a deed looks like? It looks wonderful. All right. Deja vu. Showed kids 1 ounce silver and 10-gram gold. He said, "That's nice, but I don't need it." Alright. Does it bring back memories when silver was $50 back when you bought something over again? History repeats. I'm not sure what that MWriter77 is getting at there. So, all right. Richard, a good time is not being broke. All right. When you have a well and your own electricity source and your own dwelling, it's totally different feeling. It's getting cold out here. All right. Banking. These kids need to go back to school and learn about banking. All right, let's cruise down. Garden Warrior, what up, UE? What's up, Garden Warrior? Taxes are always less away from public. Awesome show. Well, thank you, Road Trip Easter. I really appreciate you saying that. Economists repeat in cycles. It doesn't rhyme, but it matches. Love your commitment, my dude. Props to Simon for the constant hustle. Yeah, well, thank you very much. What is it? Boy, what a name. Fantastic. Fantastic. I love the name. I love some of the handles out there. I really appreciate it, but I really do feel like this is like, man, this is my thing. This is like a passion of mine to follow, to understand, to share the information that I come up with. Like, I absolutely love doing this channel. I love doing the videos. I love being out here doing the live stream. I love doing the research. I love coming up with like things like the credible threat theory and sharing that with everybody. Kind of looking at all these ideas of what it is that many economists see going on and give it a counter view, one that is very different from anybody else out there. And I feel like I've done it in a way that is essentially as high quality as it gets, outside of the fact that I'm an uneducated dude who's just sitting. I mean, I got a high school diploma, that's it, man, and I just kind of cheated my way to get that. And so when I think about the way that some people are out there and articulating their view and such these, wonderful words, and it's all presented very cleanly and everything, very professional, and I think to myself, yeah, man, I think I could beat your ass in a debate, and like, I understand, like, I don't want to sound arrogant or prickish or anything like that. But, damn, I've done a lot of research and a lot of work to get to the understanding that I have. And when I see somebody saying, oh man, you don't know nothing about the Federal Reserve, and I'm thinking, yeah, I just met somebody who really doesn't understand the Fed, because most people hear me talk, especially those who really understand what's going on. They have to admit, man, dude, you are far from uneducated, right? And I have to agree. I've done a lot of research to educate myself. But I'm not going to claim that I have gotten any kind of knowledge outside of what it is that anybody else can get, because I got it from the internet the same way that anybody else can do it. But very few people poured over the speeches in a way that I did, going through each there, fine-tooth comb and picking out like little statements that they were using and deploying throughout these speeches to then give the message to the other central bankers out there what it is that they were doing. And I picked up on it. I'm like, I can see this, guys. I can see I can see the language. I can sniff it out. I know what it is that you guys are up to here. You have a problem with this neutral rate. I can see it. I can see the words being used, pushing the elevated inflation ever higher. Transitory, remember that? Man, talk about a boost to inflation expectations. I think about that. People are like, dude, you screwed up just along with the Fed. It isn't transitory. And I'm like, dude, the whole idea of transitory being deployed into the mainstream media pushed elevated inflation expectation. It works even more power to the Fed. And now I know I'm the only one who sees it that way. But when you recognize it as a rate, as a position in which that forces the neutral interest rate higher, it worked for the Fed. It worked in the Fed's favor. Nobody knows that because they look at the Federal Reserve as making a mistake and that they don't know what they're doing. But very rarely do they look at it as saying, no, they knew exactly what they were doing and they did this on purpose to achieve a particular goal. Get that damn neutral interest rate off the lower bound of zero. By any means necessary, including the death of people. Because that seems to be what's occurred. Now, I'm not saying anywhere in their statements they said we were going to cause people to die, but they certainly said that there was going to be pain and suffering. They said from the increase of inflation was going to be a painful experience for the people who could suffer, the people who would suffer the most with the people at the end of the line with lost wages and incomes, or lowering wages and incomes. So sad to see it, but well, for me, it wasn't sad. I'm thinking, God, that's horrible. Let me share this with everybody. And then everybody says, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, during this time in which that all these people were devastated, I was able to position myself better than I was prior. Now, I think I probably could have done better if I was to focus in and do, the hard work and dedication more than what I'm already doing. But considering that I don't feel like I have fallen backwards but have actually advanced, I think I'm doing okay. Right? It's forward, sometimes you go fast, sometimes it's slow. but as long as you're going forward. And, you know, all the people out there saying you can't do that, I'm thinking, okay, well, no, you can't because you don't believe you can. But the rest of us out here who feel that we can, we're not going to give up on the idea that we can actually make it in this economy, in this condition, with this, you know, administration and all the crap that's being pulled right now. Some of us feel that, no, you guys don't make it. Like, I'm going to go make it, you know. And sometimes it might be faster, sometimes it might be slower. Audit your personal network. It's not easy, though. Yeah, TV Zubers statement. Yeah, you're right, all-nighter. I mean, you know, that's probably one of the harder things for me to now come to the understanding of is that, you know, even the idea of the day job within itself. Like, I like my job. I like doing the sales. I like, you know, being in the business. I like the company. I like the people. I like everything about it. Like, I like it. It's like, you know. But I also recognize that there's a particular energy that's involved by being in that. And when you recognize that you have to control the energy levels in which that you are experiencing within your life in order to acquire the things that you need. For example, most people, when they say, oh, dude, I would love to have a YouTube channel. I say, great, man. Let's get a video out right now. Let's do one tonight, right? Let's fire it up. Let's make a video. What is it that you want to do, right? And then, oh, no, I can't. And I'm thinking, why not? Why not? Why not right now? And so when you think, like, how is it that most people end up thinking that they want to be successful, but thinking will never make you successful? Doing will. Absolutely doing will. And for most people, doing is scary. So now I think back to it. If I was scared to put out a video because I didn't think that anybody would watch, I wouldn't be here. The very first video I put out, I didn't think anybody would watch. I literally didn't think anybody was going to be watching The Uneducated Economist. Who would? I thought, you know, I'm going to put out videos and kind of treat it like my own personal journal. And if people want to join in, cool. If not, fine, right? I don't care. It's my own personal journal. You can join in, have a discussion about it, whatever. And as I started doing videos with that kind of mindset of just not caring about what it is that I was doing there, other than just creating my own little, you know, collection of videos to, you know, share my thoughts with not only with myself for later, but then anybody else who wanted to join in, it started to rise. I didn't have to have fancy equipment. I didn't have to have fancy topics. I didn't have to have anything out there other than be authentic and real and just put it out there. So that's all I did. I didn't think about it as far as what I needed it to do. I didn't think about it as far as like, man, if I don't do it this particular way, nobody's going to watch. I didn't care. I just went for it. And so now understanding that the moment came that I was offered, like it was growing, but the moment came that I was offered to do an interview, somebody says, hey man, I think your channel's great. You got 900 subscribers. It's growing. I have 10,000 subscribers and I would love for you to come on my channel and do an interview. And I went, oh, whoa, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's a lot to ask. He's a huge YouTuber, 10,000 subscribers, asking me to share. I don't know if I can do this. Okay? So nervous. But Mike Martins was the first person to ask me to join in on his live to do a video or to do an interview with them. And after that, I just couldn't believe how awesome of a feeling, how great it was to have done that interview with Mike and to finally get that, like, that experience. And I thought, man, I would love to do more interviews. And I kid you not, over the next couple of years, I did hundreds of interviews for people. when lumber took off and was running up to its all-time high, I would be doing 2 interviews a week for people's podcasts, for their videos, for private, round circle meetings with I don't even know who these people were, CEOs of building operations and suppliers and stuff. Like, I was getting out there and I was reaching some people. I was touching them. Kind of weird to say, but I was out there and I was finally, I was getting my name out there and getting around, and I didn't even know what the hell was going on. I didn't even try. Like, I wasn't trying to do this. I was just like, hey, I just want to put out videos, right? I just want to put out good videos. And then I was offered to go speak an engagement. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know if I can do this, man. Go up and speak in front of people on stage? And I said, George, are you sure, man? I mean, the rebel capitalists, this is like an elite group, bro. Like, I'm just the uneducated economist, He says, yeah, I wouldn't want anybody else's lumber perspective other than yours. Yours is the key. I said, absolutely, man, I'm going to do this. Now, 6 months before the rebel capitalist, I was excited. I was pumped, ready to do this, right? As it got closer and closer, my nerves were going off the charts. And I still hadn't come up with something I really wanted to say. 30 days. 30 days before the Rebel Capitalist event that I'm supposed to go down to Houston, go speak on stage for an hour in front of hundreds of people, millionaires, people who paid $800 to get into this thing. And here I'm going to go down there and I'm going to speak on stage for the very first time as an uneducated economist, talking about the lumber industry, and I'm gonna do this? Hell yeah. All right, let's go for it, man. Well, I mean, what's the worst that could happen, man? If this is the limits, man, I achieved so much. I mean, if this is it, like if I screw the rebel capitalist up and just like totally bomb up there, I don't care, man. The ride to get to this level has been absolutely amazing. And I go down to Houston, and I grab that mic, and I deliver the presentation at the Rebel Capitalist, and people cheered, and it blows up, and everybody is just screaming how awesome it was. And the channel just keeps taking off. I didn't try. I wasn't trying at any given time to do any of this. Not to try and make 100,000, like get the channel to 100,000 subscribers. I didn't try to make money off of it. I wasn't trying to do any of that stuff. The only thing I was trying to do was come out here and share my thoughts and ideas. That's the only thing I was trying to do. And it's the only thing I still try to do. I mean, the money is great. The ad revenue was absolutely killer when that lumber was taken off and people were hitting the channel 20, 30,000, 50,000 views a video. Yeah, you make some pretty good money during those times, right? But it doesn't stop me from not, like, even if I'm not making those killer dollars like I was back when lumber was taken off and everybody was trying to figure out what was going on, I don't care. Like, I like the money coming in, don't get me wrong. It's a great way to position myself and my family and everything else. But it's not that important. As long as I'm doing this and I know that the efforts are helpful and useful, the rewards are coming. That's just a given. That part, like, not that important. Like, it's coming. Like, whatever. Whatever comes next is awesome. What did All-Nighter he just sent me a message. Hold on here, guys. Jason. Oh, thank you so much. You just informed me that there's a super chat up there for me. And holy moly. Flatto, dude. You just sent me $100 super chat? Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Holy moly, thank you. Yui, you've come so far. You inspired me. Come back at you with another 100. Dang, dude. So supportive of the channel, man. That is absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's so crazy. Like, I'm glad Freddie never got to experience, like, he did a little bit, but Freddie was pretty young, because he's like, I think he was like maybe 4 or 5 years old when I started the YouTube channel. And so he kind of always just remembers me having the YouTube channel. And I don't think he ever really understood that there was a life before YouTube, you know? And as we kind of progress through this, and I think about what it is that it's now doing, like it's given me the ability to give Freddie a life that he doesn't, like I don't think he's going to recognize there's a split, like from the time before to the time after. He only knows the time after. Thank you guys for doing this for me. You know, like if it was just me, I wouldn't care. Like I really wouldn't. I mean, I'm cool. Like I would go and hang out on the beach and go surfing or fishing or just do whatever. Just like, I mean, I hate to admit it, but if I didn't have the family or the responsibility of it, I think that I would probably just drink a lot and smoke a lot of weed. I think that's probably what I would end up doing. But knowing that I have this responsibility and that I can do something to give these guys like the best opportunity, not necessarily options, but the best opportunity, one that I never thought that I was ever going to be able to do. You know, when you're that broke at 40 years old, in debt and drunk, like you just don't care, like it literally, you just give up and it's just like there's no hope. And then I don't know, maybe it's just like the determination of saying, well, if I can't make it big, maybe I'll just, make it at least a little bit better. And I'll just get out of debt and quit drinking. Maybe like if I can get those two things done, maybe then this won't be so bad. Right? And it was tough. Like the drinking part of it, I think that's probably one of the hardest things that had to take place. And giving up on drinking meant like not just giving up on, basically getting loaded or high or whatever. It was giving up on a lifestyle that I really wanted. Like in my mind, I really wanted it. I liked hanging out at the bar with the people and I liked going to the parties and I liked doing it. And I thought, man, this is what I really want. And then I think to myself back then, you weren't living a life that you wanted at all. You were living one that you thought you wanted, but it wasn't the one you wanted. Like if you look deep down inside and ask yourself, man, what did you really want in your life? It was this. It wasn't alcohol and parties and people and all the other stuff. It was to have the security. It was to have the abilities to pay the bills on time. It was to have the stabilities in the unity. That's really what it was. And now I look back and it was like, man, I was fighting that so much. Like literally fighting that when I could have just easily just accepted it. Right? Like let go of the alcohol, let go of the debt, let go of all the other stuff and just accept it into your life. And it's amazing once you kind of let go of your ego in a lot of ways that holds you down, that hold you back. It doesn't really necessarily hold you back as much as it gives you like tunnel vision. If it doesn't go this way, then it's it's broken and it fails and it doesn't work. When the moment you let that down, like all this like all this stuff starts to show up. It's because you built up them walls. Thank you guys. I can't thank you enough. I don't know where I'd be without you. Developing perspective like that takes time. Yeah. Charlie followed the Sabbath like me on Saturdays, was turning away from Israel. Don't forget the perspective you've gained through your learning experience. And this is the thing, like, I love firing up these firing up these live streams to look at these chats. And it's amazing, like, to see how many familiar names are constantly here on these live streams. Like the group here that we have developed, this community here on the Uneducated Economist is really unique. right? I mean, we have a perspective and understanding of monetary policy that is so different from most of the other YouTubers out there and the economists and all the popular ones that have mass followings and stuff like that. Our perspective is very unique, and it's literally like I feel as we developed it here on this channel, it is literally directed for the working class individual. It's not meant for the millionaire. Like, I don't know what the millionaire probably would just look at this, at my information, and it's like, oh, that's so cute. You talk economics. That's so nice. Right. But that's cool. I don't care. Right. I think about the information that I have shared with some of the people that I have shared it with, and they come back to me and say, dude, you have definitely nailed this stuff down. You have figured it out. You called out the lumber market absolutely like to a T. And a lot of the people who had followed the uneducated economist credible threat theory prior to COVID, leading into COVID and through COVID, definitely see how the Fed strategy played out. And nobody really sees that except for us. You know, literally nobody. I can't find anybody else who talks like we do. You know, or at least has, taken on the understandings like we have. Oh, what did I screw up all-nighter? I love having all-nighter as a backup here. Was there another one? Was that it? Oops. Oh, I see. It was John, actually. Oh, he's setting up a meeting. Okay. Sorry, guys. Got to make sure that I'm all-nighter. Yeah. He sends me messages making sure that I got, I caught certain comments and certain chats here. Okay, we got MMA Psyche. MMA Psyche. 4.99. Thank you so much. So do you think the Fed will ever understand where the neutral rate will be, considering we have never found what normal is since the great financial crisis? Do I think that the Federal Reserve will ever find where neutral rate will be? No, I think that will be an ever elusive position that the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve wants to maintain neutral, right? So they want to get in a neutral position and then they maintain that neutral position. But the only problem is that you don't know where neutral is. So there's going to be times in which that they are either going to try and be restrictive or accommodating to the economy. That's either going to be above or below that neutral rate. Now, achieving neutral will happen, but it'll most likely just be briefly, right? And being able to maintain neutral, like consistently going into the future is, again, it's going to be very difficult, as you're not going to be able to maintain inflation and inflation expectations, as these are constant movers. So is interest rates and monetary setting policies. So if you are in a position in which that you are looking at the Federal Reserve to try and maintain that neutral interest rate, what you are essentially is thinking is that they are going to neither be accommodating nor restricting the economy. The moment that you recognize that one or the other is actually taking place, then you will know whether or not the neutral interest rate is no longer, at the level in which that they were thinking it was. How you are able to determine that without going back over time. So like, 6 months, 8 months down the road, or a year down the road, you're like, oh, you know what? I think the Federal Reserve might have been a little accommodating. Oops. Right? See, this is hard to understand the monetary policy through the interest rate setting adjustments. It doesn't really work that way anyway. What does work is the people's belief about those interest rate setting policies. See, now, if you want to adjust the interest rates within the economy, all you really have to do is just put out a credible threat that there's going to be a major cut coming. Oh, 50 basis points, 100 basis points coming. Next meeting is going to be a huge cut. All these reasons, blah, 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 blah. Massive propaganda about it, and the lowering of interest rates will begin to take place. That's the difference. Okay. See, to try and force yourself to understand the mechanics of the neutral interest rate and where the Fed funds rate is going to be very difficult to then position yourself in accordance to that, because you're not going you're not going to be able to observe it in real time. You're going to have to look at it over a year and then recognize what it is that's taking place. So for you to take the advantage of a mechanical version of the Fed's monetary policy in relation to the neutral interest rate so that you can position your stock portfolio or whatever in accordance to it is going to be very damaging, in my opinion. Like, I don't know, maybe you can figure it out. I don't think I can. Because you have to look like it's going to be back over a year before you're going to recognize whether or not you were accurate on where the Fed funds rate was in relation to the neutral rate. But you are going to be able to immediately recognize whether or not the market is perceiving an interest rate cut and whether or not that cut is actually getting deployed into the economy just based off of expectations. That is very difficult for a lot of people because they want it to be the mechanical version, but it's not. It's the psychological. All right. And that's really what it comes down to is the Fed doesn't want to move anywhere. They want that neutral interest rate to meet them. And the only way to do it is off of expectations, elevated inflation expectations that are persistent. Thank you so much for the $4.99. I really appreciate it. And so there is no normal. Like there's no normal interest rate. There's no normal neutral rate. There's nothing that's normal. It's always constantly evolving and moving. All right. Oh, there's another one? Oh, shoot. Huh. Sorry, guys. Okay. Oh, that was the one from Flat Dude. Thank you so much for that one. Is there another one back up here? Oh, wait, there it is. JC, thank you so much for the $20. Simon, forgive me. I'm still trying to dial in and was wondering if you could warn us if you're going to get into nail again and when you're getting out. Watching the chart, it looks like we're about where we were back in August. Okay, JC 1701. I don't want to, right? I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to like deny the rest of the people like, particular information, and only share it, in secrecy or something like that. But I don't want this channel to be that. Like, I don't want this channel to be an investment channel, because here's the problem. I've already had a few people ask me. It was just like, dude, did you get out a nail? And I'm like, yes, a while ago, right? And I don't hold a position in nail, and I didn't want to be talking about it in that fashion because other people were trying to follow that and make money off of my information by doing exactly the trade that I was doing. And I'm like, don't do that from me, right? Like, don't do that to me. If you want to do it, go for it, man. Like, I mean, I'm not like, I totally appreciate the super chat. And if you really, really, really want that, I will let you know, like, contact me or whatever, and I'll let you know when I feel like I'll be jumping into the game. But I don't want this channel to be that kind of channel. Like, I don't think that that's not my wheelhouse. That's not what I'm trying to do. Right? I shared that bit of information because I was excited about it. I saw it. I wanted to take advantage of it. I said, man, when you are in a position in which that you think your job, like you can see it differently than anybody else's out there, that's your uniqueness that you have for your position that you are standing in on account of the fact that you have learned as much about the macroeconomics and the underlying forces and everything that's taken place, that you can now use that for your advantage. I tried to share that with that nail position, right? By talking about it, by actually doing it. I wanted to share how it is that I was using the information in my personal view. Like, I even had there's a guy who constantly tells me that I don't share any way of like actually useful information, and I'm just here trying to make money on YouTube. And you guys probably see me arguing with him quite a bit on there. That was one of those times in which that I was trying to share with the audience exactly how it is that I use this information in order to position myself in certain ways. That happened to be one of them. All right. Now, again, like, I don't want people to rely on this channel to try and make a stock trade. I want them to look at this channel, to gain a better perspective on what it is that they feel that they need to do with their stock trades. That to me is where I want to go. You know, so if you really, really, really want to know, maybe I'll do it in a members only live stream, and we can just keep it to the members only portion of the channel, not to keep it secret from everybody else, because I don't want it to be a secret, but I just don't want this to be that kind of channel, you know? Because everybody else is gonna tell you, oh, you follow me and you can make all kinds of money, and then if I screw up and you make and you fail and you lose a bunch of money, then you're gonna get mad at me and you're gonna be like, dude, you suck at this. And I'm like, I didn't want you to do that, you know. I didn't want you to follow me so that you can hate me for like losing money if I do it wrong, you know. Because I don't want this to be that kind of channel. All right, picking stocks is silly. I didn't UE started an ETF. Start an ETF. I don't even know how I do that. I don't know the exact definition of hyperinflation, but I do believe we are in I believe we are in stagflation right now. All right. We are 100% in stagflation. Yeah, you just got to go buy the ETF and nail, I guess, and that's it. Well, here's the thing. Nail is a 3 times leveraged ETF that follows the home builders, backed by home builders and building suppliers. And the problem with the 3 times ETF is that unless that underlying asset, which is essentially the builders and the home suppliers, unless that is on the way up, then there is a deterioration that constantly happens to these leveraged ETFs. So if it's on the way up, man, it's boom, 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 boom. It's killing it, right? But even if that stock was to maintain, like all the underlying stocks that are backed by that are back in the ETF, if they were to just maintain and just kind of like, just run flat, then the ETF would fall. It would continue to lose value because there's a payment position that has to be taken in order to acquire that leverage. So understand that it has to be in a position in which that it is constantly rising. And I'm talking all the builders, D.R. Horton, Lennar, all these other guys, including some of the suppliers. These guys all have to be moving up, not all of them, but generally it all has to be going up in a trajectory that is ever increasing. Anything that goes down is down 3 times. Anything that's flat will also go down because of the erosion that takes place within the leverage. So very, 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 very dangerous position to hold for anything outside of a day or two. All right? I bought it in June and I essentially ended up selling it off about I don't remember, maybe 4 or 5 months later. I can't remember exactly. I think ultimately I took just over 40, like I think it was like maybe a 40, just under 41% gain out of that position that I had taken off of it. I did a few dollar cost averages in and I did a few dollar cost averages out. It worked out really well. I think that was good. I could have gotten a lot more out of it if I had sold earlier, but I took it the way, I think 40% gain was killer. So I took that, right? And so that was me. Again, very dangerous. I had all kinds of people contact me saying, dude, do not suggest that. That is dangerous. It's wrong. You really don't know what you're doing when it comes to stock trades. You are showing yourself to be uneducated. And I laughed and I said, perfect. I love it when people tell me that I'm wrong. I love it. So I'm going to go out there and do exactly that. Right? I'm going to prove them how wrong I am. Oh, dang it. I couldn't do that. That sucks for them. Yeah. All right. We got MMA Psyche with the $4.99. The U.S. being the only real growth engine globally in stagnant global economy going forward. It's only a matter of time till me go neg rates, right? Until we go negative rates. Well, no, I don't know if that's necessarily like, it's a matter of time before, yes, we do go into negative rates because they are preparing for it. And really, there is no other way of really stimulating the economy by lowering interest rates because the people are just, they're debt saturated and they're not going to take it. So eventually negative interest rates are going to be the tool that is going to be attempted in order to continue the commerce and everything else. This is the creative financing that they're doing. So when you say it's only a matter of time, absolutely, it is only a matter of time. But like when you say it, or a lot of times when we hear it, we think, okay, that's going to be happening like real quick. And I don't think that's to be the case. Like I think like we got a while, down the road in order it, because you have to think, you have to be in a cashless society, you have to have everybody accepting the central bank digital currencies or stable coins or something. You have so much that has to happen within the people themselves in order to create an environment of negative interest rates, that I just don't see that happening like next year. You know what I mean? It's like it's going to take a while. It's going to take people growing accustomed to using the stable coins or, a digital currency or something, because it's essentially going to have cash out of that system, and that's not going to be easy to do. How late is it, guys? Man, it's getting cold out here. All right. Man, you guys are so awesome. Thank you so much for all these wonderful comments. So many of them up in here, and these super chats are just constantly flying in. You guys are awesome. T Flats with the $7.99. It's not like you're forcing us to give you money. You're giving us value here, and in return, we want to give you all articles, find, and links as well. Well, I thank you guys, and again, I don't want to hold back. Like if I do get into that nail position, and you really want to know that I am doing it, then I will. I'll put it on members only live stream or something like that, and I'll keep it limited because I don't want that to be like what this channel is all about. But if we want to discuss it in the members only live stream and keep it to a small group of people, so that we can discuss it in a real intelligent, fashionable manner, so that we can make the best decisions for ourselves, then cool. But I think that if I was to put that out there in just a general video, then there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to try and do the research to figure out whether or not that it's a good move for them. They're going to listen to it, they're going to buy in, they may not catch the moment that I say that it's time to sell, and then they will be stuck in a bad position, losing out on money, and then they'll say, hey man, you were terrible at this. And that's not not the way I want this to go. But I would want to, I do want to share it with you if you truly want to know, and try and position yourself to make money, because you're also in that kind of field, and the idea of it. But I don't know, I don't know. All right, just like dating, there's a job or two for everyone that wants one. Just a standard of the seeker thing. You have great info. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. What time is it? All right, it is getting on to almost 8 o'clock, and it's kind of cold out here. Yeah, I love my AI, but I do catch it lying to me. Deplorable. I tell you what, I did mock debates with both Chat GPT and Grok. So basically, I just, trained it up and saying, okay, I want you to use the mainstream media narrative to form a debate. And I want to debate monetary policy versus the mainstream media narrative. And as it started asking, basically delivering statements about the mainstream media narrative and like real ones, I started pushing back against them. As it was telling me I was wrong, I started delivering the links and the facts to both Grok and ChatGPT, and just essentially annihilated the mainstream media narrative in every way. And then, basically it was just like they started describing the credible threat theory and could not get it to prove me wrong. From the negative interest rates to, or not negative, but the neutral interest rate rising, to the Fed wanting inflation, the Fed wanting opportunistic reflation, showing all that other stuff. By the time I'm done with it, it's just like, man, I have really honed the ability to describe what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing in such a way that it can counter just about any mainstream media narrative that is delivered. It's perfect. I love using it for that. You know, and it was just like, no, it's wrong. Here, let me show you where it's wrong. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. You know? All right, thank you so much for the $7.99 from T Flats. People should be riding the inflation wave up. Then, if deflation does happen, sell your assets and ride the U.S. dollar down. Right? Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's ultimately it, right? Buy low, sell high, and then buy low again. But what if here's the thing. What if there was an inflationary scare that didn't create the inflation? See, the Federal Reserve took the Fed's funds rate to zero, and then the balance sheet of 850 billion to over $4.5 trillion, but it failed to produce an inflationary scenario. So the idea of being worried about inflation or the Federal Reserve creating inflation or just wondering how you protect yourself from inflation is literally what it is that the Federal Reserve needs you to think and feel in order for them to regain their monetary policy, that opportunistic reflation. A lot of times we hear people speak in a way that says, oh man, inflation is horrible, it's bad, it's terrible, the Fed is causing it, they're ruining your life. And then people say, yeah, that's the case. And then I look at the Fed's words and I think, man, that is exactly what they needed you to feel and think. So the people who had delivered that message, are they working for the Fed? Like, I'm a huge Ron Paul fan. I have hats that say end the Fed. And then I think to myself, man, those are the people who deliver the hyperinflationary scenario, which is what the Federal Reserve wants them to do, so that the elevated inflation expectation can raise the neutral interest rate. They are literally using their enemy against themselves. All right? Those people who hate the Fed, end the Fed causes inflation, money printer go burr. All those people who hate the Fed, they rounded all those people up and then used their expectations against them. Believe the hyperinflation scenario. Believe the money printer go burr. Believe the destruction of the dollar value. Believe all that stuff and raise the neutral interest rate and regain some of the Federal Reserve's ammunition. I mean, when I finally broke this down and saw that, and I thought to myself, damn it. You know? All this time. When I finally saw it, I'm thinking to myself, damn it. All those people who are seeing the Fed's evilness are then working for the Fed. They hate the Fed, and everything that they hate about it is giving the power to the Federal Reserve. They are literally doing it for them. And it's so sad to see it. It's so sad because it makes the people like lose their mind. They are like, I don't know, like I can't even describe it. They are crazy, right? They're now crazy. And I'm the crazy one. Like, I'm the one who's crazy. Oh, man. T Flats, thank you so much. $14.99, man. You guys are so awesome. Also, controversial, haha, how can XRP native work if the treasuries and the stable coins are what the Fed love, bro? For XRP people, I don't get it. The XRP narrative work if the treasury and stablecoin are what the Fed love. For XRP people, I don't get it. I don't know what it is that people are expecting out of XRP that is going to do anything than what is happening right now within monetary policies. Like, to be able to transfer a dollar from here to there is not going to change policy when it comes to the Federal Reserve. If you take it and you put it into this here token, which, where is it? right there. You go and put it into this here token, all right, which is a Disney dollar. It isn't any different than the dollar itself, except that now I'm limited on where it is that I can go with this one. This is a Disney dollar. It's a souvenir that I picked up at Disneyland when I was a kid. Right. And so now when we think about that, if you take a dollar and you put it into this here Disney dollar, well, that's awesome if you're in Disneyland. I mean, there ain't no place in Disneyland they won't accept it. It's 100% the same thing as having a dollar until you leave Disneyland. And now it's just a souvenir and it's a token of something that represented a dollar someplace else, not here, right? Because you're outside of Disneyland. Well, XRP isn't too far off from that. Yeah, it might be a dollar within the banking system, but it ain't a dollar to you and me and everybody else who's wanting to buy a loaf of bread. Could it transact that dollar between me and that bank or that store or whatever? Sure, it could carry that, right? It can be the highway, the network that in which that it travels on, but it's still a dollar, right? It just isn't this Disney dollar. But it's essentially the same thing as that Disney dollar, just far more technical and, advanced than a piece of paper with a, essentially, like a little image on it. Yeah, it's far more technical and advanced than that. Absolutely, it is. But at the end of the day, what does it end up going to be? It's a dollar. It's the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve. That's it. Everything else is transferring through into it. The efficiency that can come from some of these other things that are out there, yeah, I can believe that can happen. Sure. There's no doubt in my mind that there's going to be some other currencies out there, like stable coins, possibly that of, XRP or whatever, all these different networks that are going to be doing these transactions and fulfilling the needs of some possibilities or whatever it is out there. But at the end of the day, what is it that is going to be taking place? Dollar transactions based on monetary policy coming from the Federal Reserve. Gosh, look at all these. My gosh, guys. I mean, hey, it gets warmer with every super chat, I tell you what. JC, thank you so much for the $20. All right, you really opened my eyes to all this, Simon. I never understood the economy like this before. God bless you and your family. You are such a blessing to us and honestly to America. Well, thank you, JC. I really appreciate it. And that's the type of comments that I really touch me, because this is really what I was trying to do, is to share the information in a way that you can understand it, to then get a view that is unlike anything that you have ever had before, because most of the time the view that we are getting is coming from a propagandized information delivered through the mainstream media. And if you can let go of that and then give it a different view, one that you have formed and understood for yourself based on underlying economic forces and the speeches that you have read through the Federal Reserve and how it is that we have delivered this information here, shares that kind of thing, people who have internalized that have come back to me and say, dude, you cannot believe how much this has impacted me. It's changed my life. Not only just the ideas, it's like, man, I got to give up drinking and get out of debt, but then also just understanding the general view of the economy and what it is that's happening with the inequality and how the new money pours in and separates the rich from the poor, drives out the domestic manufacturers, and ever increasing amounts of foreign production come in. Understanding these things from your own personal point of view then gives you the ability to start looking out there and making decisions for yourself that is the most appropriate ones, not ones that are based on propagandized information, because that stuff is worthless to you. I mean, it's good entertainment and it's a good idea to follow it so that you have an understanding of what it is that's being spoken out there, but then to be able to see through that, not just like, read between the lines. I've had people say that it's like, oh, I can watch the news and read between the lines. No, you can't. No, you can't. They don't even deliver you the lines to read between. They don't even deliver them. There's no way that you can read between the lines. It is all 100% propagandized information. There's nothing there that's good for you. Now, seeing it from your own perspective and then recognizing some of the things that are happening there, you can use that mainstream media narrative. You can find the underlying economic forces. I was like, even earlier, Just give you an example of this. I'm reading about how Chinese tomatoes going to Italy has just been like devastated, right? They have this tomato paste that is piling up and they can't get it exported to Italy. And there was like, this was the major buyer of this particular product that China was producing. And what I thought was about it, it's the same thing as anything else. It's just like, okay, well, once you sever that partnership, it makes it very difficult to then find other people to buy your tomatoes or anything else that's going on out there. It all goes down the same way. If you cut off that supply, you need to find another buyer. Those buyers are not going to accept the same prices. They're going to accept it for a cheaper price, because if they were willing to pay a higher price for it, then you would have been selling it to them anyway already. So now I understand this from the Cantillon effect. I understand it from the underlying economic forces of the separation that happens, the domestic manufacturers, and how that competition makes it very difficult to compete against foreign production. Understanding that view, right? When I read that article, I thought, well, okay, this has happened. I can see where this is taking place and the reasonings that are underlying that it's causing it. And then you go and you read through the comments, and it just explodes with all kinds of like theories of greed, and then ideas of failure, and all this other like, I don't know, just kind of wound up, messed up ideas that, I don't know, like forced by government or something. And so as I read through these like kind of these comments, I don't see anybody in there saying anything about the underlying economic forces that created the situation, right? If you have a position in which that you were growing in overabundance because you had one particular customer, and that customer found it cheaper or decided that you were no longer profitable to them, what ends up happening? Right? You fail. You can't export it to anybody else. And so if you're not growing the cheaper ones, who is? Why are they growing cheaper ones? That's not that's not very hard to ask, right? Like what's the difficulty in understanding that if you're growing soybeans here in the United States and China cuts you off, that you're not going to find another buyer? Right? I mean, we experience it here with soybeans. Why wouldn't China experience it with their tomatoes in Italy? It's the same thing. But if you can't recognize it from the underlying economic forces, then you're going to blame. You're going to blame politics, you're going to blame greed, you're going to blame banking, you're going to blame all kinds of stuff out there. But ultimately what it is that you had a partner that severed that partnership, and because you are not a producer of the cheaper product out there, but other people in the world can produce it cheaper, your partnership being severed is devastating. Yeah. You grew the most out of anybody and able to send a ton of it out there. You increased your standard of living because of the sheer amount of production that you put out there, and now your standard of living means that you can't compete. There's somebody out there who's going to grow the same thing cheaper than you. Right? That happens every time. It doesn't matter what country you're in. Right? You carry on for a while, you produce, you sell it out there, you get new money in from foreigners because of your production, you will raise your standard of living and you will make yourself uncompetitive. It will happen. It will happen every time. It's just a matter of time before it'll take place. Somebody out there will figure out what it is that you are doing, and they are going to do it cheaper than you. Once that happens, you won't compete. You can't. Unless you blow them up or, forcefully through government try to, tariff and whatever. And then when you see that happening, that's the symptoms of the underlying economic forces playing out, forcing you to have to go and, tariff and do all that other stuff. Yeah, I don't see how XRP can take over the US dollar. So yeah, but here, Simon, stay warm with the 7.99. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. But I think I am going to go inside now because it is getting quite chilly out here and I want to go get some dinner. I haven't eaten. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for all those wonderful super chats. I can't believe it. What a great live stream. Very good questions. We really break down a lot of stuff talking about the currencies, how it is that we can position ourselves in accordance to what it is that's taking place right now, understanding that wedge and how it's getting driven, knowing that it's going to be ever increasing amounts of new money that is going to cause that separation, and then also knowing on top of it, how is it that they produce a consumer? We here in the United States are consumers. We consume the world's stuff. If they cannot lower interest rates to get us to borrow money to become a consumer, how do they produce that consumer other than force feeding it into us? Until then, the top 20% are the consumers. All right? So we wonder why it is we feel left behind. It's because we are getting left behind. And if you don't position yourself to deal with that, then you're going to be left behind. All right, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Very awesome of you guys for all the wonderful super chats, for hitting that thumbs up button, for sharing this video. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. You let me know.